From homeless black to millionaire, the journey that even Donald Trump and Elon Musk admire. David Stone's hands trembled as he read the headline again. Eyes wide but heart pounding like a drum. From homeless black to millionaire, the journey that even Donald Trump and Elon Musk admire. It sounded like some wild, tall tale. But the photo below showed a thin, ragged man with sharp eyes and a crooked smile. The same man now sitting daily on the park bench just a block from David's quiet suburban home. How could this be? The man everyone called Jax was no millionaire. Not in any way David had seen. He was a shadow in the sun-soaked neighborhood. A living ghost with a twisted philosophy that seemed to poison schoolyards and stir whispers in playground corners. David's chest tightened whenever he watched his son Alex, 12 years old, but already weighed down by cruel words and cold stares. Alex, with his wide glasses and love for old sci-fi books and puzzles, no one else understood. Jax had started talking about success and survival in the park. Kids listened. They changed. The playful teasing turned sharper, cold, merciless. Alex's best friend stopped coming by. "You hang with freaks now," one boy spat. The laughter that followed was sharp enough to cut right through David's peace. One evening, David approached Jax. The man looked at him, eyes gleaming with something dangerous. Knowledge? Mockery? "You're worried about your boy," Jax said, voice rough like gravel. "You think I teach them wrong? Maybe. Or maybe I just opened their eyes." David's throat tightened. His mind spun. Who was this man, really? And why did a strange, aching memory stir somewhere deep inside? Something about his own father and a secret long buried. The pieces didn't fit. What if this man wasn't just a homeless troublemaker, but a ghost from David's past? A ghost ready to tear through everything he'd built. Word spread fast. Parents gathered, whispers turning into heated talks in living rooms. Fear bred rage. And soon, a small group, David included, decided to confront Jax. That afternoon, as the sun blazed and children's laughter turned thin and brittle, David stood with others in the park. The air buzzed with tension, breath hitched. Jax looked calm, too calm. Then words spilled out. Secrets, stories of betrayal, money lost, a family broken by greed and silence. As Jax spoke, a heavy silence fell, a silence that cracked beneath the weight of truths unspoken for decades. David could feel the ground shift beneath his feet, and then Jax's eyes locked with his. That glint, sharp, knowing, almost mocking. It sent a chill crawling down David's spine. What was Jax holding back? What truth could ruin more than just reputation? Alex's safety hung on the edge. David's voice caught in his throat as he faced the man who had invaded their lives, not just as a bully's shadow, but as a living link to a family story he wasn't sure he wanted told. David took a deep breath and stepped closer. The crisis was just beginning. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning." Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, drop a powerful like that really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. David took a deep breath and stepped closer. The crisis was just beginning. Jack stood there, calm and sure, as if he knew what was coming next, and the weight of those moments lay thick in the air. David felt his heart race. He had to protect Alex. He couldn't let this stranger, this specter from his own troubled past, dig into their lives any deeper. You think you're some kind of guru? David shot back, anger bubbling. Ah! You think you can poison kids with your twisted lessons? Look at my son. The park around them crackled with tension. Other parents shifted, faces pale. Jack's only smirked, and that difficulty in David's throat twisted tighter. It felt like all eyes were on him, waiting, searching for some resolution, some bravado. But all David felt was the furious beating of his heart, like it might burst from his chest. Freaks! Huh? Jax laughed, a gritty sound. You think you know what it's like to survive, to claw your way up from nothing? His voice dropped, almost conspiratorial. You don't even know your own son. David blinked. What did he mean by that? What do you know about my son? He demanded, fists clenching by his side. I know everything, Jack shot back, eyes glinting with a darkness that made David shiver. And then, before anyone could react, Jax took a step back, opened his arms wide, and a loud crack echoed through the park, and everyone turned. A flash of light danced near the playground. Gasps erupted. David's heart lurched as he registered the flames beginning to swirl at the base of one of the trees. The fire crackled and roared, licking up the trunk, hungry for more. Kids screamed, parents rushed back, confusion swelled. No! Get away! David yelled, his protective instincts kicking in. But Jax didn't move, his gaze steady on David, the flames casting an eerie glow on his face, shadows swirling like smoke. Now they'll see, Jax murmured, almost to himself. Now you'll understand. Before David could react, Jax lunged forward, grabbing a handful of dirt and tossing it in the air, screaming something unintelligible. The ground shivered, and the fire flickered as if startled. An unnatural shudder seemed to pulse through the air, silencing the chaos for a heartbeat. In that terrible stillness, people around began to back away, expressions twisting to fear and shock. Parents covered their children's eyes, the smell of burning wood thickening the atmosphere. David barely noticed. His gaze remained locked on Jax, whose eyes glittered with an unsettling fervor. What did you do? David whispered, a lump forming in his throat as realization crept in. Jax wasn't just a homeless man. He was something more. Something dangerous. Then in a blink, Jax let out a low, throaty laugh. Don't you see? You're all part of this, a cycle that never ends. At that moment, the fire shot higher, a burst of heat washing over David. He turned to run to Alex, but before he could take a step, he heard Jax's voice clearly. Time to uncover the truth, my man. The park erupted into chaos, parents crying out, children running in every direction. But through it all, one clear thought flared in David's mind. What truth? What had Jax meant? As screams echoed and flames danced, David's glare never broke from Jax's eyes, now lit with something wild and unfathomable. Suddenly, in that flash of hellfire, David realized the weight of the darkness they all carried, and the unfurling mystery that just erupted into their lives, leaving everything they thought they knew hanging in the balance. The crisis was only just beginning. David took a deep breath and stepped closer. The tension in the air thickened, a silence hanging heavy as they both stood in that strange standoff. The sun's rays slashed through the tree branches, creating a dappled dance of light and shadow across the grass. David could feel the eyes of the other parents boring into his back, anticipation and anger swirling among them. "What do you want from us?" David finally spat out, voice catching slightly. He forced himself to meet Jax's piercing gaze. For a moment, he searched for the man's humanity, something, anything that might make sense of this whole mess. But there was nothing, only that unnerving glint staring back. "I'm just a mirror," Jax replied cryptically, shrugging as if it meant nothing. "You don't like what you see?" Before David could respond, a screech sliced through the air. A child's voice, a shrill scream, raw with fear, rang out from the corner of the park. It was Alex. David's heart plummeted, and he whipped around, panic swelling in his chest. A group of boys, faces twisted in glee, had cornered Alex, who was pressed against a tree trunk, hands raised as if. "Freak, had enough of your weirdness yet?" one boy shouted, pushing Alex harshly. David's stomach churned. Everything seemed to slow down, the world dimming around him as he saw the horror unfold. He wanted to move, to run, but fear kept him rooted. "Alex!" David barked, voice shaking. But before he could step forward, Jax's hand shot out and caught his wrist, gripping it tight. "Wait!" Jax hissed, intensity flickering in his eyes. "You've got to see this." "What?" David was breathless, torn between wanting to pull away from Jax and rushing to his son. "Not just bullies," Jax said, voice low but deep with a knowing tone, a clairvoyant. "Watch." Time seemed to stretch as David watched helplessly. Jax didn't let go, his grip an anchor. David's eyes sharpened. What did Jax know? Suddenly a shadow fell over the scene, and David caught sight of an unexpected figure. It was a woman, looking frayed at the edges, drawing nearer with wild eyes and unkempt hair. Panic filled her every step. In an instant, the boys stopped. They were frozen, confusion painting their faces. "Get away from him!" the woman yelled. And then, to David's absolute shock, she pointed directly at Jax. "You think I wouldn't find you again? You think I'd let you stalk my son?" The atmosphere snapped. A thick silence descended on the park, like a suffocating blanket. Gasps rippled through the gathered parents. They exchanged bewildered glances, whispers igniting around them like sparks in dry grass. "Mom?" Alex whispered, voice trembling. David's heart raced. This wasn't just some stranger. This was real. "Shut your mouth!" Jax snarled, the cool facade beginning to crack, fury bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. "They don't belong to you." The woman stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You gave them everything, didn't you? And now you want to take what's left? You sorry excuse for a father." David stumbled back, shock erupting like a volcano inside him. "Father? Jax?" The pieces fell together like a jigsaw puzzle in chaos. Jax wasn't just some homeless man giving poisoned wisdom. He was a central piece in a twisted game he never understood. "What the hell is going on?" David breathed, horror spilling into his voice as fear for Alex surged to the forefront. The truth was so much darker than he had imagined. What had he unknowingly invited into their lives? The air crackled with tension. Relationships were fracturing, identities unraveling before his eyes. Jax's grin was gone, replaced with something raw and desperate. David's voice trembled as he tried to regain control, facing the chaos now at their doorstep. The truth had ripped the bandage off this festering wound, and the crisis was just beginning. The air crackled with tension, and for a moment, everything felt suspended in time. David's mind raced, caught in the grip of horror and disbelief. How could Jax be a father? What did that mean for Alex? The park around them blurred into a frenzy of chaos. But David could only focus on the woman, standing defiantly against Jax. Her words slicing through the air like a knife. "Get away from him!" she screamed again, eyes locked on Jax. "I won't let you ruin my son's life again!" "Ruin?" Jax's voice dripped with fury. "You've taken everything from me. I'm the one who lost everything because of you." David felt the blood drain from his face. Lost everything? What exactly did Jax mean? Then a new voice broke through the wake of tension. "Is this some kind of joke?" It came from a man standing just beyond the growing crowd. He was older, with graying hair and a stern face. "You think you can just bulge in here and make accusations? This is about the kids." "No," shouted the woman, hands shaking. "This is not just about the kids. This is about a father." But before she could finish, a child's piercing scream echoed through the park, sharp and chilling. David's heart raced. "His son! Alex!" David shouted, his voice rough. But he was still held back by Jax, gnarled fingers gripping his wrist like a vice. "Just wait!" Jax hissed, eyes flashing. Then, like a match struck in a dark room, everything ignited. Alex broke free from the corner, running across the grass. But he wasn't alone. Behind him hounded the group of boys, their laughter twisted into something cruel. They charged, closing in on Alex. He turned back, eyes wide. Fear splashed across his face, like a canvas of pure terror. "Stop!" David's voice rang out, desperate. But another scream cut through. The woman's voice, now trembling, reached a fever pitch. Suddenly, she fell to her knees, hands clasping her head. "No, not again, I can't!" The look in Jax's eyes shifted. It was a fleeting moment of pure fear that barely passed before his expression hardened again. "You think you can take him back? You think you can pull him out of my life as easily as that?" David's mind whirled. What had Jax done? The crowd began to murmur, confused faces darting between the trio. The father, the mother, and the traitor they believed was just a homeless man. "What's happening?" whispered someone. "Is he really?" And then, just as Jax opened his mouth to respond, a sharp crack echoed across the park. Lightning split the sky above them, followed immediately by a torrential downpour. The rain pummeled down like a sledgehammer. It turned the grass into slick mud, blurring faces, soaking the witnesses. Pandemonium erupted. Parents screamed, pulling their children away. The boys chasing Alex slipped back. their bravado faltering under the storm's fury. But Alex stood firm, eyes on Jax and the woman. "Stop it! He's my dad too!" Alex shouted, his voice ringing through the chaos. The words fell like stones, heavy and unyielding. David's heart stopped. "What did you just say?" he breathed, icy terror gripping his chest. The woman gasped, eyes wide. "No, Alex, listen to me. You don't understand. He is—" But a lightning bolt illuminated the park, casting eerie shadows on Jax's face. "Exactly what you wanted to be rid of!" Jax shouted through the downpour. David felt the truth crashing upon him like the rain. Could it be possible? Alex had known something. A shard of a broken family hidden in plain sight. All the puzzle pieces clicked together in a way that shattered his world. As the storm raged, David stood frozen. The whispers around him turned into cacophonous chaos, confusion dominating the night. Truths lay bare, accusations hung heavy, and like the storm, everything was now up in the air, up for grabs, waiting to settle once more. What would emerge from this downpour, and how would it reshape them all? David stepped closer to Jax, a pit in his stomach growing heavier with each shared heartbeat between them. Tension hung thick in the air as they stood surrounded by the gathering crowd. Fear danced in their eyes, and silence wrapped around them like a tightly coiled spring, ready to snap. Children stared, their laughter replaced by confusion, while parents whispered, brows furrowed with concern. The day felt too bright, too cheerful for what was about to emerge. "Who are you, really?" David's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. But the weight of the "I'm just a man who sees the world differently." His words dripped with intent, a challenge wrapped in mystery. The crowd leaned in, curious. "Stop playing games," someone shouted from the back, breaking the fragile silence. "All right," Jax said, raising his hands slowly, the corners of his mouth curling up in a half-smile. "I'll show you." He gestured behind him, and the air felt charged. David's heart raced. What could he mean? Suddenly, a figure emerged from the crowd, pushing forward with urgency. David's eyes widened as he recognized the woman. It was his younger sister, Maya, her face pale, eyes wide with alarm. "Jax, you shouldn't be here," she called out, panic spilling from her lips. Gasps erupted around them. The murmurs swirled like leaves caught in a whirlwind. David's breath caught in his throat, confusion twisting his insides. "What do you mean, Maya?" David's voice strained, the familiar comfort of family now feeling like a distant memory. Forks in the road blurred together. Jax remained unfazed, leaning back against the bench, arms crossed. "Looks like your family has secrets." "David." "Secrets?" Maya shot back, her voice trembling but defiant. "You have no idea what you're talking about." But Jax's laughter, low and rumbling, splintered the air like thunder. "Ho, I know more than you think, more than he thinks." His gaze settled on David, fixing him with a piercing stare that felt like ice, cutting deep into his soul. "What are you hiding?" David asked, a fierce urgency creeping into his words, pushing him forward. A thread tying him to all of this. The crowd waited, holding its breath, eyes darting between them. "That's the thing, brother," Maya said, her voice breaking as tears filled her eyes. "Jax, he knows Dad. He knows what happened to him." Time froze. Questions ricocheted in David's mind, colliding against memories he'd long buried. His father. The mystery of his disappearance when David was just a boy, leaving a void that was never filled. The reason for their broken family, scattered like ashes in the wind. What happened? David's voice went hoarse, matching the sudden stillness around them. Jax leaned forward, the smirk gone, replaced by a serious demeanor that seemed to darken the air. He had debts, more than he let on. I wasn't just a passerby in your father's life. I was there when it all fell apart. Gasps erupted once more, eyes darting between David and Maya. The truth hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I could tell you everything, David. Jax paused, savoring the moment. But what will you do with it? It could ruin your entire life, your family, everything you've built, or set you free. Enough! David shouted, the ground trembling beneath him, fear of the fragility of his world swirling in his gut. How could one man have so much power? But Jax only shrugged, a wicked grin creeping back onto his face. Your choice, brother, but know this. Sometimes the truth hurts more than the lie. The silence swallowed them whole. David's heart raced, thoughts scattering like leaves in a storm. The weight of the past loomed large, ready to crush him. He glanced at Maya, her face a canvas of pain and fear. As the crowd held their breath, waiting for what came next, David knew the crisis was just beginning. What would he choose? What would he risk? Jax's shadow loomed large, casting doubt over everything he thought he knew. David took a deep breath and stepped closer. The tension in the air felt thick, like the calm before a storm. Jax stared at him with eyes that sparkled. Was it challenge or something deeper? David wasn't sure he wanted to find out, yet he couldn't shove the feeling down. Why are you doing this? David's voice cracked, shaking with emotion. Why hurt my son? What's your game? A flicker of something crossed Jax's face. Anger? Pain? It vanished almost instantly. I don't hurt anyone. Just show them what the world really is, he said, voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried weight. Your boy needs to wake up. But the words didn't sink in. They hung in the air, stirring uncertainty. Suddenly, a loud crash cut through the park, making everyone jump. A couple of kids playing nearby screamed, and all eyes turned as a figure stumbled into view. A woman, disheveled, drenched in dirt and confusion, her clothes torn. "Help! Somebody help me!" she cried, voice raw and scared. David's heart dropped. She looked familiar. The crowd parted as she staggered closer. Panic surged. "Where is he?" she shouted, frantically scanning faces, landing on Jax, who went rigid. "Stay away from me!" Jax yelled, face paling. It was a fear that swept through the crowd, a collective gasp that echoed like a low thunder. "Why are you here?" the woman pressed, trembling all over, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Did you tell them? Did you make them believe that I was gone?" The murmurs around David grew louder, disbelief mixed with confusion, rippling through the gathered crowd. The woman was clearly unraveling, her eyes wild, darting back and forth like she couldn't focus. "What's going on?" whispered one of the parents, bewildered. Another murmured, Is that his mother?" Jax clenched his fists, eyes locked onto the woman, but he didn't move. "You shouldn't be here. You need to leave," he hissed, desperation dripping from his words. With a sudden twist, the woman lunged toward him, voice cracking. "They need to know. They have to know who you really are." The crowd drew back, and David felt lightheaded. What was she talking about? Who was this woman? "Mom?" Question mark. Alex's voice was a whisper, barely audible. David's heart raced. Confusion and dread clashed in his chest. The woman turned, and her gaze fell on Alex. "I didn't want this. I tried to keep you safe," she cried, collapsing in front of him. Her hands reached for him, eyes wide with anguish. Time seemed to freeze. Jax's expression twisted, confusion morphing into rage. "Get away from him!" he shouted, taking a step forward. All at once, it clicked. Heavy memories crashed over David like a tidal wave. The missing person reports. The whispers about a family tragedy buried deep in secret. His own father's warning about Jax. "Stop!" David shouted, words spilling out in a rush. "What's the truth? What are you saying?" And in that heartbeat, the noise of the park faded, leaving only Jax's hollow laughter. "You're too late to save him, David. She's been lying this whole time." Panic clawed at David's throat as the pieces shifted around him, memories warping and bending. Was everything he knew built on a lie? "What's happening?" He shouted. Voices screamed. The world spun, leaving only the truth suspended in the air, heavy and suffocating. Before anyone could react, a siren wailed in the distance, closing in fast, drowning out the chaos. And amidst the clash of confusion and fear, one question loomed like a storm. What was real, and what was the lie? David took a deep breath and stepped closer. The crisis was just beginning. Jax's eyes shifted from the group of angry parents to meet his, a smirk creeping onto his lips. For a moment, the world around David blurred. The chatter faded, replaced with a pulsing thrum of fear and anger. "What are you hiding?" David's voice cracked, barely a whisper. He felt the weight of every judgment-filled gaze pressing down on him. The air felt heavier, thick as fog. Then, as if in a cruel twist of fate, a loud crash echoed in the park. A nearby tree trembled, its branches shaking violently. Everyone turned, panic flickering in their eyes. David's heart raced, anticipating the chaos that might follow. But that wasn't the worst of it. From the shadows, a figure stumbled out, a woman, disheveled, wild-eyed. Her clothes were torn, dirt smudged across her cheeks. "Help! Somebody, please!" she shouted, her voice raw with desperation, cutting through the tension like a knife. Jax's expression shifted, a glimmer of recognition flashing across his face. "No, not you!" he hissed, stepping back as if struck. The crowd gasped. David could see the woman's eyes darting around, wild with fear, searching for someone, anyone, to rescue her. "They're coming! They'll find me!" she cried, scanning the parents frantically, until her gaze landed on David. You have to stop him! You don't know what he's done!" The world tilted. David felt his stomach churn. What did she mean? Who was she? Jax's hands balled into fists, the smirk gone, replaced by something darker. "What the hell are you talking about?" he spat, his voice low, almost menacing. But the woman's panic only grew. He's dangerous. You don't know what he's capable of. He was in the streets with me. We were partners. The crowd shifted uneasily, whispers swirling like leaves in a storm. David's heart raced faster. Partners? Did she mean in crime? Survival? Secrets tangled in shadows began to flood his mind. What kind of past did Jax share with this woman? Jax stepped forward, trembling now, eyes blazing. "Shut up! You don't know anything!" "Don't you dare!" she shouted back, her voice breaking. "I know you, Jax. I know who you really are." David felt a shiver crawl up his spine. Everything he thought he knew about Jax, the man who had twisted his son's world, was beginning to unravel like a fraying rope. Then, without warning, a hand shot out from the crowd, grabbing the woman's arm with a fierce grip. It was another parent, a fellow father, determined to stop the chaos. "Enough! Get away from her!" But the woman yanked free, eyes wide with raw emotion. "You don't understand! Jax is hiding something. A truth so deep it could ruin him. And all of you." The air thickened with tension. David felt his heart pounding. What truth? What deep secret tied Jax and this woman together? His mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle suddenly scattered and jumbled. Jax glared at David, a challenge sparking in his gaze. "You really want to know, huh? You really want to play this game?" The ground felt unstable beneath David's feet. Tension crackled in the air, a storm brewing. The facade of the perfect life he had created was slipping away into the shadows, exposed by the screeching voice of desperation. What had he gotten into? "David!" Alex's voice called from a distance, clear and scared. David's heart flipped. He turned to see his son stumbling forward from the chatter behind the trees, wide-eyed and confused. "No! No! Stay back, Alex!" David yelled, panic washing over him. But it was too late. The crisis had only just begun. David took a deep breath and stepped closer. The crisis was just beginning. Jax stood there, his eyes flaring with something dark, as Alex stumbled forward. Fear painted across his young face. David could barely breathe, terror gripping his heart like a vice. "Stay back, Alex!" he shouted, panic clawing at him. But Alex was already moving, his feet carrying him toward Jax. Drawn like a moth to a flame, the world felt like it was spinning out of control. Jax's gaze flickered between Alex and the woman, each shift of his expression telling a story of desperate betrayal. The tension in the park crackled, people shifting back and forth, uncertain and scared. Then, with a sudden jolt, the ground shook, a tremor that rippled through the earth. Everyone froze. A loud roar erupted from above, a voice deep and reverberating, unnatural. It was followed by a blinding flash of light. David squinted up into the sky, heart racing. The clouds twisted and darkened menacingly, swirling like a pot about to boil over. Lightning struck down, a jagged bolt connecting sky to ground, illuminating Jax in an eerie glow. "What's happening?" a voice muttered somewhere in the crowd, wide eyes scanning the sky, and then Jax, confusion twisting their features. Jax's face twisted into an expression of pure terror. The bravado he had before slipping away like sand through fingers. No, this can't be happening! Before anyone could process what was unfolding, the earth heaved beneath them. Gasps erupted as people stumbled back, afraid to fall. David turned to grab Alex, but he was too late. Alex's look of confusion morphed into a look of shock as a figure erupted from the ground, seemingly born from the swirling chaos. It was a man, tall, shadowy, and draped in dark clothing that flowed like smoke in the wind. His eyes glowed fiercely, like two burning embers in an endless night, and his presence seemed to swallow the light around him. Time slowed as he marched forward, every step echoing like thunder. "Jax!" he bellowed, voice powerful enough to shake the very air. "You failed to keep your promise." "Stop!" Jax shouted, his voice wavering. I didn't know." Panic washed over David's face. Who was this man? What had Jax gotten them into? The crowd let out a collective gasp. Whispers ignited like fire in dry brush as fear spread wide. "What's he talking about?" someone shouted, eyes darting back to Jax. "What did you promise?" "Alex, run!" David yelled, fear clawing at his throat. But Alex stood frozen, transfixed by the figure's frightening presence. "What do you want from us?" David shouted, desperation fueling his words. "What does Jax owe you?" The man turned, fixing his blazing eyes on David. "Your family has more secrets than you can imagine." His voice boomed, slicing through the crowd's whispers. "And now they will be revealed." As Jax stumbled back, David felt the ground shift beneath him. "No, no!" Jax cried out, eyes wide, fear etched into his face. With a sudden snap, the dark figure raised his hand, and a shockwave pulsed through the park like a forceful wind. David shielded Alex, crouching low. Around them, the crowd erupted into screams and chaos as trees swayed violently, leaves swirling. And in that moment, everything flipped. The woman, frantically searching for answers, fell to her knees, tears streaming down. "Jax, you can't let this happen. We can fight it together. Please." In a split second, reality shattered. David's world tilted. Jax wasn't just a homeless man or a father. He was part of something much bigger, something twisted and dark. The connection he shared with the woman turned his existence on its head. "My son!" Jax muttered under his breath, eyes wide with horror. "What have I done?" The crowd's chaos morphed into a low murmur, fear sitting heavy in the air. Jax's world, once obscured in shadows, suddenly blazed with clarity. David's heart sank. "Alex!" he shouted, gripping his son's shoulders fiercely. But Alex's eyes were glued to Jax, confusion swirling in his gaze. And then it hit David like a freight train. This was not just about survival. This was a reckoning. Secrets were clawing their way into the light, and the place where love and fear collided threatened to engulf them all. The darkness within Jax was only beginning to unfurl, and as the storm raged, he wondered if they were all bound to its chaos. As lightning cracked the sky again, illuminating their haunted faces, David knew one truth. Everything they believed was just an illusion, ready to crumble. Jax stood there, rooted in the chaos he had wrought. The dark figure loomed, casting an ominous shadow over the park, and panic rippled through the crowd like a live wire. David felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him as he held Alex tightly, eyes darting from the dark figure to Jax. "Victor!" Jax cried out, voice sharp with fear, like a man on the edge of despair. "You shouldn't be here! I told you to stay away!" Victor laughed, a booming, echoing sound that sent chills rack. "You thought you could escape this? You're tied to the darkness, Jax. Tied to our past." The crowd gasped as the skies darkened further, heavy clouds swirling ominously. David could feel the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. The air became thick, electric. He looked at the woman. Was she Jax's partner? Gasping at Victor's appearance like she had just seen a ghost. "Why are you doing this?" she begged, her voice cracking as she clutched her son. "What do you want?" Victor stepped closer, eyes glinting as if drinking in her fear. The truth to come out. "Jax thinks he can hide behind this facade of fatherhood. It's all a lie." He pointed a long finger, shaking it like a weapon. "He abandoned everything that mattered. His family, responsibility, me." Stunned silence fell over the crowd as everyone turned to Jax. His facade of bravado began to crumble. "You're lying!" Jax's voice trembled. "You don't know what you're talking about." But Victor's laughter echoed, sharp and mocking. "Oh, but I do. You ran from your own blood, Jax. From your past. You tried to bury it beneath the streets." His voice boomed, resonating in a way that shook the very trees. David's heart raced. What was this? Jax had secrets buried deep. "What blood?" he demanded, feeling the urgent need to understand. Everything was unraveling around him. "David, no!" Jax shouted, spinning to him, panic evident in his eyes. "Don't listen to him! He's playing you! Think, David! The mystery behind Jax's life is written in every shadow," Victor exclaimed, a carnival of chaos unfolding beneath him. "He doesn't just see the world differently. He's part of it, part of the darkness that threatens all of us." Suddenly, in a shock of sheer unpredictability, the ground trembled violently. An earthquake rippled beneath their feet. A deafening crack echoed through the park, silencing the murmurs. Screaming children as trees trembled, roots breaking free. Through the shaking soil, tendrils of smoke began to rise, curling up from the ground like the fingers of a hand reaching out from the underworld. David stumbled back, holding Alex tighter. "Mom!" Alex cried as the smoke twisted and it shifted. It began to form a face, terrifying, familiar. A woman appeared, drawn from the depths. It was her. "Mom?" David gaspe. Voz vierne una huéspeda se despertar le chocó. "David, ayúdame!" She gasped, ojos muy verdes y con mucha emoción. "Gooditsni! Thaisni! That's the roque Jax is!" David froze. His corazón tumbó lava pendiente. Memories ludaron de la infancia. Sombras de su madre le perseguían. Echoase muy. But this was not laughter. It was the heavy weight of grief and the finality of truths buried beneath family ties. "I'm not Jax's son!" she exclaimed. "He's not your real father." Your real father. But the smoke surged, drowning her voice, twisting her figure, until all that remained was a lingering shadow. The crowd erupted into chaos, parents shouting, children shrieking, confusion and disbelief taking hold. David's mind whirled. Everything he thought he knew shattered like glass. "It's too late," Jax howled, panic leaking into his voice. "I couldn't save you." "No, no, no," David gasped, struggling to grasp the reality as he saw Jax's expression morph from anger to anguish. And just like that, silence fell. An uneasy, deafening silence as everyone waited, breathless, breath caught in their throats. What truth had just been revealed? What bond had been broken? The air crackled, thick with danger, and before David could catch his breath, a dark weight pressed upon his chest. He realized the storm was brewing inside him too. Everything was about to change. The crisis was only just beginning. David stood frozen, heart pounding, as shadows flickered across the park. The dark figure of Victor loomed, his words echoing in David's ears like an ominous warning. "Your family has secrets, and they are about to be revealed." Jax's face twisted in fear. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he shouted, desperation spilling from his voice. The woman who had appeared moments earlier, the one connected to Jax, pleaded as tears streamed down her cheeks. "You can't let him do this, Jax! We need to end this cycle of pain!" David felt the urgency pulse through him. "What do you mean, cycle of pain?" he pressed, trying to grasp the reality unraveling before him. Alex clutched at David's side, eyes wide with confusion, his innocence stark against the chaos. "Your father," the woman gasped, her voice trembling. "There are debts to pay, truths to uncover. You need to let go of the past before it consumes you all." Victor crossed his arms, a dark smirk tugging at his lips. "And here I thought the truth would set you free, Jax. But maybe it will drown you instead." The park trembled, a tangible shiver running through the ground. David instinctively shielded Alex, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Listen to her!" David yelled, his voice fierce as he tried to pierce through the chaos. "What do we need to know?" Jax's eyes darted between David and the woman. "You don't understand. I've tried to protect you all, but the past won't let me go." Then, as if the very sky reacted to the tension, clouds rolled in, obscuring the sun, and rain began to pour, heavy and unrelenting. Chaos erupted around them. Children screamed, parents shouted, and the crowd swayed like a living entity. Confusion swirling in the air, the woman stepped forward, her voice breaking through the din. "If we don't face the truth, we're all lost. I won't let him take you, Alex." The thunder roared overhead, shaking David to his core. "What truth? What do you mean?" David's heart raced, feeling the weight of the moment crash onto his shoulders. "Jax!" the woman cried, desperation in her tone. "We can stop this together! We can make it right!" Suddenly, Victor raised his arms, dark energy swirling around him. "It's too late for redemption!" His voice crescendoed like a storm. "The sins of the past will consume you all!" In that moment, the world seemed to fracture. Jax stepped backward, his bravado faltering. "I can't lose my family again!" His voice cracked as he fought against the tide of darkness. The shadows surrounding Victor surged forward, wrapping around Jax, pulling him into an abyss of fear. David lunged, each heartbeat quickening as a wave of protectiveness surged through him. "Let him go!" David shouted, reaching for Jax as the shadows clawed at him. "We can break this, together!" "No!" Jax cried, struggling against the darkness. "You don't know what he'll do!" With each urgent breath, David felt the essence of his family unraveling at the seams. The fog of confusion and fear pressed heavy against his chest. Maya, watching the scene unfold, stepped forward. "We can face this. We won't let it tear us apart." And then, in a surprising twist, the darkness began to shrink, the shadows faltering. Jax gasped, breathless. "Together," he whispered, realization dawning. "Yes, together," David echoed, gripping his son's hand tight, rallying their divided spirits. Victor's eyes flickered, anger surging. "You think unity can save you?" But the energy shifted. The air buzzed with hope as the crowd found their voice, yelling in unison. "Together!" In that moment, the chaos began to crack, light slicing through the darkness like a beacon of truth. David felt courage swell inside him. As Victor staggered back, shadows retreating, David steadied himself. "This ends now," he commanded, heart racing. The storm overhead rumbled. But now the rain felt cleansing, washing away the weight of fear. The figures in the park began to dissolve, revealing the true essence beneath the shadows. With one final push, David shouted, "We are more than our pasts. We are family." And with that, light burst forth, illuminating the park, washing away the remnants of fear. The shadows shrank into the distance, vanquished by the strength of their unity. The crowd erupted in cheers, a wave of relief crashing against them. Jax fell to his knees, breathing deep, and the woman reached for him. David turned to Alex, who smiled through tears, innocence rekindled in his eyes. "Did we win, Dad?" "For now," David breathed, pulling his son close. They stood together, holding tight against the lingering uncertainty. As the storm dissipated, clarity dawned. They had faced darkness together, yet the echoes of their past remained. The journey was far from over. Now, if you loved this heart-pounding conclusion and want to see what happens next, subscribe immediately so you don't miss our upcoming exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. Don't wait even a second longer to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting our channel through these actions. Let's keep the adventure alive.